Buenos Aires was rocked by violent clashes between riot police and protesters outside Argentina's National Congress on the 12th of June. As the Argentine lawmakers debated a swath of liberalizing reforms, hundreds of Argentine riot police fired rubber bullets, tear gas and water cannons at demonstrators in a bid to disperse them. The defiant protesters pelted stones, set cars ablaze, and threw Molotov cocktails, fearful that the proposed measures will hurt millions of Argentines. The local media described the scene on Wednesday as resembling a battlefield. The president's office, too, struck a defiant tone, describing the protesters as terrorists attempting to carry out a coup d'etat. Finally, in the early hours of Thursday, Argentine President Javier Milei's controversial economic reform package won Senate approval. Our next report brings you the details.
A debate that instigated a riot as Argentine senators began to debate a controversial economic reform package proposed by the budget-slashing president Javier Milei on Wednesday. Scuffles broke out outside the Congress between the protesters opposing the proposed reforms and the riot police. The angry protesters tried to bypass fences set up to prevent them from reaching the Congress. In no time, the clashes turned violent, with protesters lobbing stones at officers who pepper sprayed them. Reportedly, at least 40 people were treated at the scene after being pepper sprayed. As the shield-bearing officers pushed back the protesters, the angry protesters overturned and set ablaze 2 cars. Nearly 15 protesters were arrested and at least 5 opposition MPs in the crowd were hospitalized. The controversial reforms aimed at bolstering the country's flagging economy include declaring a state of economic emergency, cutting pensions, and diluting labor rights. Leftist political parties, labor unions, social organizations, retirees, and teachers are bitterly opposed to the reforms.
This is a disastrous law for the Argentine people, where there is a labor reform without severance pay, where workers pay the salary tax again, where President Terminator is empowered to take any measure for 1 year, where international corporations are empowered to invest in our country with a 30-year grace period on taxes.
This law attacks all workers in Argentina. I am a retired teacher and I do not want to be the last generation of retirees in my family. I want my sister, who is a doctor, to be able to retire, my niece, who is a student, and my daughters, who are professionals and who will not be able to retire if the pension package passes today.
After hours of debate, the vote was opened. The motion, which was initially tied 36-36 in the Senate, was preliminarily passed after the head of the chamber, Vice President Victoria Villarruel, broke the tie.
For those Argentinians who are suffering, who are waiting, who don't want to see their children leave the country, for those Argentinians who deserve to regain the pride of being Argentine and always thinking of everything for Argentina, I vote yes.
The bill's separate articles were then addressed point by point and approved with modifications in a full vote in the early hours of Thursday. For a final green light, the measure now again moves to the lower house. The highly divisive bill was initially rejected in its original form and only approved with major changes by the lower house in April. Javier Milei, a right-wing economist, came to power in November last year after vowing to take a chainsaw to public spending. He has, since then, cut the cabinet in half, slashed 50,000 public jobs, suspended new public works contracts, and ripped away fuel and transport subsidies. But despite such harsh measures, annual inflation currently is close to 300%, with more than half the Argentines now languishing in poverty. The first 6 months of Milei's tenure haven't resulted in improvement in Argentina's economy, which begs the question, can Milei, a self-declared anarcho-capitalist, solve Argentina's worst economic crisis in 2 decades?